Hey everyone, welcome to week 4 of our series, Enjoy. We are finding God in the good stuff. Yes, God meets us in all the challenge of life, carries us through, stretches us, grows us, and all these things, but He also invites us to enjoy Him. Today, we talk about creativity. This week, we are continuing in our series, Enjoy. Around here, we're always wanting to find our way in the direction of Jesus. And so there's lots of ways that happens. There's times where Jesus says, listen, you've been living this way and you need to live another way, that He's kind of constantly course correcting us like a really great parent, pointing us in the best direction with all of the best hopes and dreams for us. Sometimes that comes in epic support in crisis situations. Sometimes it comes in turning life kind of right side up in some pretty epic ways. But it also comes in just kind of the normal journey of life and God bringing good stuff into our lives. What parent only wants to correct their children? What parent only wants to challenge their children? What good parent doesn't also just line up and invite their kids into really fun, exciting experiences that they get to enjoy together? That's really the premise of what we're seeing here with God, is that yes, there's a time to navigate crisis. Yes, there's a time to find our way through challenge, and God will do that in all kinds of seasons, but He also invites us into really, really good stuff. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about food. Anybody love food? We all love food, right? You probably got a party, hopefully, today where you're gonna feast. That'd be awesome, right? Things to celebrate, really, really great. Last week we talked about adventure. We meet God in unique and special ways when we adventure and go just beyond our comfort zone. Aaron did a great job with that last week. Next week, we're gonna talk about nature and beauty in particular, and how God invites us to enjoy Him in the beauty, especially the things that have been made the way that He made them. But this week, we're gonna lean in on something that, I don't know, this is the second time in a month I've preached on. I thought I'd never preach, but this week we're gonna talk about creativity. So this week, the goal, here's your assignment. I'm just gonna give it to you right out of the gate. You need to set aside some time this week to make some stuff. Okay, just make stuff. Take stuff and make something with it. Can you turn to somebody next to you and say, let's make some stuff? Yeah, I'm just telling you. What happens when you sit like a grade school or preschool child down at a table and you just lay out all the craft stuff? 1, mess, right? But 2, creation. They're gonna bring you something and they're gonna be like, look what I made. And you're like, oh, that's so great. What is that? Tell me about it, right? You get curious in that moment to find out, but there's just something natural in us of putting stuff together. And I'm just gonna say right out of the gate, I want you to start thinking about ways that you could really lose track of time, connect with God and others in the process of creating something. Now, some of you right out of the gate are saying, I'm not creative, and I'm gonna tell you over the next little while why that doesn't actually matter at all, okay? So if you're I'm not a creative, not really a thing, that's not the point, okay? We're gonna get there. God invites us to meet Him in this idea of creativity. And we're gonna look deep into the story of God to see why this is actually the most natural thing ever. At the end of our time together, you're gonna be oh yeah, this is so obvious. Let's make some stuff. In fact, one more time, with conviction, a little bit of bossiness, tell the person next to you, seriously, let's make some stuff. All right? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. My dad, actually, I learned a little bit of this from my dad. My dad had kind of 2 jobs. His primary job as I was growing up is that he was a high school teacher. He had been an elementary school teacher and then became a high school English teacher. I had him 1 time, my brother had him 3 times. I've always felt bad for my brother. But my dad was a really awesome teacher and he loved that. But that left his summers free. Earlier in life, before he finished his degree to become a teacher, he was also a union carpenter. So in the summers, we would build houses. We would actually do this as a family. My dad, my brother, another guy, industrial arts teacher, and my dad. We would build houses and do most of the contracting, a little bit of subcontracting. We would do all that kind of stuff. And it makes sense because my dad's dad, my grandfather, was a union carpenter, general contractor, and construction foreman. And so he was all about that. He had all that kind of skill set. My dad had all kinds of experience along the way in being able to do that. What I never understood, though, is that my dad would work all week, even in the winter, and we would find out that in the evening, he would go outside and build stuff. I'm like, Dad, why are you working after work? That's the summer work. You're doing the school year work. Why are you working after you work? We would end up in other people's homes from our church or neighborhood doing kind of repairs and little projects. When they didn't have a project to fix or repair, which is like almost never in home maintenance, he would do something and build something that would be like creative. It would end up hanging on the wall or sitting around the house or doing some other things. He just found his way into all these things, and it was so confusing to me. Like, what in the world is going on? Because this wasn't really my thing. It just felt like work, because that's what we did in the summers. It wasn't until my mid-20s that I started to realize exactly what was going on with my dad. My wife and I had moved into a home. We lived in a mobile home for a long time, and then we remodeled this 1920s house, and we needed a cabinet for our TV. And we love furniture, right? In the Midwest, it's all about antique furniture, but we couldn't find anything, and so I looked at Dad and I said, Dad, what if we built something? And he's like, yes, immediately, like designs start flowing. He's like, okay, well, there's this style, this style, this style. What are you thinking? Okay, well, I don't know, let's go this way. What kind of wood are you thinking? I'm like, Dad, I've always loved walnut. And right at that time, this house that I had grown up in, the babysitters, both my parents were teachers, the babysitter where I went, they had this epic big walnut tree where I had grown up having walnut fights with the neighbor kids. And that tree needed to come down. Yeah, not a good idea, just so you know, concussions abound. But we cut that down, and my dad took it to the sawmill and had it brought down into 3/4-inch stock. And so we go out to the garage, and it's all vertical and lined up. Just around the corner of the garage was the shop that he had put together with all kinds of woodworking tools, where after work he would go work, right? And I'm like, so we go and we start sorting through all the wood, finding the most beautiful pieces for the shaker doors we were gonna build. The top that was gonna start as kind of this home plate shaped thing, because it was in the corner initially, but could be cut off to become a flat cabinet, kind of a pie safe kind of vibe, and all these kind of things. We see this one piece that has this hunk of lead in it, because that tree at one point was outside the edge of town. Somebody had been hunting and put a slug in the side of that, and now that's sitting in the side of my cabinet, reminding me that this tree had a long history before me. We start imagining, we start laying it out, we start planing and sanding and joining and constructing and designing and rethinking and all these other things. And my dad, he's just like flying, just loving this thing. And I finally had to step back, and I'm like, this still feels like work to me, but he's having the time of his life, loving this thing. And we built a cabinet that we'll be able to pass down generation to generation to generation out of this beautiful walnut with this deep history and the memories of the days on top of days and the evenings used in my dad's shop putting this cabinet together. It occurred to me finally after a while that this was not work for my dad. This was creativity. This was enjoyment. This was taking some of the good things that he enjoyed and put them together in a way that would last and be enjoyable for a really long time. Too many times, I think what happens is that we start to categorize life into like totally separate categories. Like spirituality and church and religion and all that kind of stuff fits over here. And then there's like the normal maintenance sort of life. There's the vocational side of life. There's the hobby, entertainment, relaxed side of life. But someone really wise once said, either everything is spiritual or nothing is spiritual. And let me just tell you, building furniture in the shop is a spiritual activity for my dad, and it took me to my mid-20s to realize it. He's actually in the long line of craftsmen. Those of you who are really great at building and putting things together, he's in a long line. In fact, you see this across the scripture. In Exodus chapter 31, this is like the most random scripture I've ever preached from, but I'm gonna read it to you, all ready? In Exodus 31, it says this, "Then the Lord said to Moses, look, I have specifically chosen this guy named Bezalel, son of Uri, grandson of Hur of the tribe of Judah. I have filled him," catch this, "I have filled him with the Spirit of God." Now pause for a second. All of us who are followers of Jesus, we know that when we point our lives in his direction, God forgives us of everything that could ever separate us from him. So he actually sets up camp in our lives, moves into our lives. The Spirit of God fills each and every one of us and gives us strength to move forward and contribute to the kingdom, to become more and more like Jesus and bring life to everyone around us. This is just natural part of our story. But this is way back in the people of God. Just after they've been rescued from slavery, they wouldn't have acknowledged themselves as the people of God in many ways. But finally, they're rescued out of slavery. God shows up and says, "You are gonna be my people." And he invites them on this journey. And in the midst of this, the Spirit of God fills a few people for a very specific purpose. The building of this tent called a tabernacle. Now, when you hear the word tent, don't think like tragic camping, wind blew it down, we're never going again kind of tent, okay? Think about massive, almost football field size, beautiful, ornate, perfectly crafted tent. A place where these humans who didn't know exactly how to interact with the God who spoke them into existence, he said, I'm gonna begin by setting up a place where you can encounter me. It will be a symbol of my presence among you. It can't contain me, but it'll be a meeting place. That's literally what the tabernacle meant, a meeting place with God. And to construct this, though, he takes his spirit and fills some particular people. It says it filled him with the Spirit of God, giving him great wisdom, great ability, and an expert. Wait, I lost it. Wait, where to go? Oh, and expertise in all kinds of craft. He was a master craftsman, expert in working with gold and silver and bronze. He's skilled in engraving and mounting gemstones and carving wood. He was a master at every craft. There's something deeply spiritual about creativity and construction, about putting together the things that God has made in fresh, creative, beautiful ways. And there's something awesome about the process of doing that it becomes, like the tabernacle, a meeting place with God. Verse 6 says, and I have personally appointed, okay, you need to know this. When you're reading the Old Testament, feel free to just use the first letter of people's names, okay? Because I don't think it does them any honor to butcher their name, all right? I've personally appointed O, son of A, to be of the tribe of Dan, to be his assistant. Moreover, I have given a special skill. God had given special skill to all the gifted craftsmen so they can make things. Turn to the person next to you, say, make some stuff. They make things that I've commanded you. Now, this is an epic making. This is a construction that matters. Again, the first meeting place with God, he says, the tabernacle, which was this meeting place inside the Ark of the Covenant, which was often described as like the footstool of God, a meeting place with God, the place of atonement and all the furnishings. And it goes on and on and on about all these ornate and beautiful things that would reflect the capacity that God had put in every single human being, and then particularly in this group of men and women, as you read on, to construct this place. What we see in this, at least, is that creativity that honors God is a place for us and for others to encounter God. Literally, in this case, the tabernacle was a meeting place with God, and a beautiful example of creativity that God has put in all of us. But it wasn't just for these spirit-filled craftsmen who were particular. It's not just for my dad who does this kind of thing with construction and furniture building, but also with piano and a number of other hobbies along the way. Creativity. Taking things that God has made and arranging them for beauty, for enjoyment, for functionality. And we do this in ways that honor and invite God's presence. It's a place for us to meet with him and with others. And this really shouldn't surprise us. There's only like one place that there needs to be any argument about whether every single person in here is creative. In fact, if there's anyone around you who looks like they're doubting just a little bit, just give them a little nod like, yeah, you got this. You're creative. Let's make some stuff. You can tell them, be honest, like it's probably gonna be ugly. It probably won't work, but we're gonna have some fun. That's okay. Listen, everybody starts somewhere. That's fine. But creativity honors, like we were made. My dad shouldn't have surprised me. This passage in Exodus 31 shouldn't surprise us. The fact that we, as children, naturally take a pile of blocks and start arranging it, or we start arranging a scene or a setting where people are comfortable. We do all kinds of things naturally. We were made in the image of a maker, right? I mean, this is what God is like. Who is more creative than God himself? If you think about it, all of our creativity, not to be too negative, is actually derivative, right? It takes things that exist and rearranges them beautifully and in fresh and new ways. It may not be inspired by anyone else, but it still requires the things around us. God, so creative, began with nothing and spoke and created everything. In Genesis chapter 1, which, by the way, I don't know what you think about creation, how it happened, when it happened, or all that kind of thing. We don't get caught up in details. A lot of us have informed thoughts about that, but that's not the point. The primary point of Genesis chapter 1 is who made it and why. And what it says about who made all things, it says God did, and we stand there firmly. Then God said this, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. Verse 27, it says, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. In case you missed it 3 times, God's very clear in a single verse. He made us. He is a creator, and therefore he is creative. And all of us who have been made to be like him, therefore are creative. So all of you who say, I'm not really a creative. Well, comparatively, maybe not, but that's not the point. Inherent in the way God made you, you are a creator in some way. You are creative in some capacity. And in that way, way before anything got jacked up by our brokenness, we were participants alongside God. God from the very beginning took this man and this woman and invited them to creatively contribute to all that he had made. God always invites our creative participation in what he is up to. If you just read on in the Genesis account, you find that he invites man and woman to govern over, to rule over, but in a benevolent way, to care for and tend all that God had created. Even Adam himself gets to be a part of naming all that is, right? From the very beginning, God, alongside those created in his image, saying, let's do this together. What do you think? How should this go? What should this look like? What can we do with this, right? There's this beauty and creativity that God invites us to. He invites our creative participation. Now, here's what threw me off early on in life is I started getting work and creativity all like mixed up. And so work became a 4-letter word. And for many of us, that can be true, right? Like shaping trees is not exactly how I describe it when I got to go trim my palms. You know what I mean? That's work, right? That's a rough like landscape day. In the story of Genesis, you'll see this in chapter 3, that it was actually our disregard of God that turned work into toil. From the beginning, anytime we point our lives away from God, it just messes stuff up. It wrecks stuff. The Bible calls it sin. Anytime we do something contrary to God's desire, it wrecks stuff. And from the very beginning, disregard of God wrecked work. And so now work and toil are all tied up in one another. And so we get caught in this dichotomy of like, okay, am I doing work to earn a living and be productive and take care of the home and make the food and all the people and all the things, right? That's exhausting. And so the opposite of that must be like entertainment, escape, get away, make the time pass, just get through. And God's like, that's a lousy choice. God actually redeems everything, including our vocational work, to bring the deepest kind of meaning and honor to him in it. But today, as we finish, I'm going to take a different path. It's not about redeeming vocational work, though we could talk a long time about that. It's actually about redeeming recreational work. The effort needed to take things, arrange them, create, sharpen, construct in ways that God has invited us to. And there's a place to really meet with God and enjoy him and people around you in this process. So I asked you earlier to start calling a category to mind. Where are you creative? Where do you like to make stuff? Or we could ask it this way. What kind of creating fills you up and draws you closer to God and others? Going out to my dad's shop and working for hours on end, that felt like work to me. But to him, somehow, after hours of effort, something in him was filled back up and ready to go do all the other things that needed to be done. In the most pure sense of the word, recreation, he was recreated in the making of things. It was a meeting place with God and a connection place with me. So the encouragement this week in the midst of this is to really call to mind, like, don't just think about this, put it into practice. What kind of creative fills you up? Where could you make some stuff where whether it turns out great or terrible, you just enjoy God and the process and the people you do that alongside? Really, here's the whole outflow. I've said it like 5 times. I'm going to say it one more time. Explore this week some creative outlets to enjoy God and others. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take about the next 5 or 6 minutes. I'm going to tell you a couple stories and give you a long list. But the only objective of the next 5 or 6 minutes is that you legitimately, internally commit to spending some time creating this week, okay? So in case you need a reminder, the person next to you right now is going to tell you, let's make some stuff. Go. Okay. I don't know if it's food. I don't know if it's music. I don't know if it's furniture. I don't know if it's air conditioner. If you do, drop it by, but it's all good. We're going to explore some creative outlets. Here's what I've been learning, is I thought that all work was work and rest was rest. But God's been teaching me something different. In fact, this quote from Abraham Heschel brought it so clear for me. He said, "He who works with his hands should Sabbath with his mind." Like back in the day when I was doing construction with my dad, it was not effort and work and like activity that I needed on a rest day. I needed to legit rest. But these days, a lot of my work is with my mind and with people, and that kind of work is never done, right? But he says this, "He who works with his mind should Sabbath with his hands." Now, if you missed our series on rest, God invites us to rest deeply with him, and Sabbath matters. A 24-hour period where we give God space to recreate us, refill us, bring some rest. But how you design that day is gonna be different based on your personality and the rest of your work. It's about enjoying God in unhurried ways. And what I learned is that sitting still doesn't really work for me. And reading and using my mind all day wears off. What I found is that an activity of creation in the afternoon, especially at the end of my Sabbath, keeps my mind active and restful and fills me back up. So almost every Monday afternoon, my mind starts to wander to work, and I don't want to do that. And so what I start to do is I find a recipe I've never made, and I start buying weird stuff I've never made before, and start putting an epic feast or epic fail together, depends on the week. One week I did al pastor tacos. It's like one of my very favorite foods ever, right? A neighbor had recently brought over like the best al pastor tacos I've ever had in my life. It was so good. I'm like, I'm gonna try to make those. I had a blast, and they were so average. But it was awesome. Made the marinade, soaked for a long time, right? Like, do all that stuff. Made some salsa to go along with it. Went and bought favorite chips from a place. You see how feasting, resting, and creativity all come back together, and God fills us up in some really cool ways. And then I sat down with my family because enjoying God is best done with other people. And so we had this epic feast, and they're like lying to me about how good the tacos are. I'm like, thank you, because it took forever. Shelly, please make us more tacos. It was great. Maybe it's something like that. Start pulling these things together. Maybe what you need to make is an epic meal. Not because you're not in a hurry, not productivity, not functionality, not efficiency. Drawn out, enjoying over time, enjoying people, enjoying God, inviting in, looking at the creativity of all the food that God has made. Just taking what he has made, treating it in just the right way, to combine in just the right way. The process is so enjoyable along the way. Recently, I also picked up another habit that I'm not very good at, but I'm learning and I'm loving it. One of my things that I love in regards to adventure is to be outside in beautiful places. So like a week and a half ago, I went and spent 3 nights in a tent in Yosemite with a friend. We just wandered around, walked about 35 miles, went up on Clouds Rest, went down below Half Dome, and came up the John Muir Trail, part of it that I hadn't done before. It was awesome. It was beautiful. But I get so frustrated because I see these beautiful places, and I take my little iPhone, and I'm like, I'm gonna capture this picture. And I look at that, and I look at this, and I look at that, and I look at this. I'm like, that's not the same. There's no way. I'm not Ansel Adams, especially with an iPhone, right? And so I said, you know what? Forget that. How can I enjoy this even more? And so what I did is I started drawing what I was seeing, which slowed me down to really start to look at the intricate details. And then when I come home and show my fail picture to my family, I'm like, this is what this was like. This smelled like this. This had this kind of texture. This is what we did here, and it calls to mind all these memories. So instead of 1,000 photos I'll never look at again because 100 of them look the same and they're all bad, I've got 4 drawn pictures. Here's the first one, probably, if it'll pop up. This was an island in the middle of Sunset Lakes that was about 50 yards off. And so me and my buddy are like, well, there's an island there. We can't not swim to it. So we swam out to this island, only we forgot we were at about 9,000 feet. So when you take a breath, you get like half the normal amount of oxygen. We almost died swimming to the island. It was great. It's a beautiful day. Right, it was awesome. Just the water was so stinking cold. It was great. It was a beautiful day, right? Or for the first time in 7 trips to Yosemite, I finally saw a bear walking along the trail. My buddy was walking along the trail, and behind me, I look back to my friend to make sure he's not dying behind me, and he goes, bear, and I'm like, uh-oh. And so he goes across the trail. Now, normally you're supposed to make noise to scare off black bears, but we're like, nope, we just want to see it. So we walk down the trail, and sure enough, about 30 feet down this log, he's just ripping this thing to shreds, looking for things to eat. He looks up at us and finally just wanders away. Yeah, I'm terrible with faces, but this will always remind me of that day, right? Or sitting just outside the tent below Cathedral Peak, where EK, a new friend from San Diego, was also doing the John Muir Trail, and he was taking some epic photos, and we got to talk about all of these things along the way. Or finally, Upper Cathedral Lake at sunrise, to look across the lake and see all the intricacy of ways that things come together. To realize that all the struggle I'm having capturing that moment is so far beneath even a photograph of it, but how much more beneath the one who said rocks, who said trees, and who said glacier, and thousands of years to shape and hone and shine and smooth, and then lake and deer, all the things along the way to just enjoy God, to slow down long enough to really do this. What we're talking about is not just making stuff to make stuff. We're talking about enjoying God and what He has made as we rearrange and savor those kind of moments. Now, here's 3 quick lessons that are not from the Bible, so kick them to the curb if you want. It's just what I'm learning lately. But enjoying God and creativity, here's what I've learned. If this helps you, write it down. If not, don't. Enjoying God and creativity is about encounter and experience before it's about excellence. As a musician, enjoy the process. Maybe you never perform for someone else, but enjoy and savor the process of learning and perfecting and exploring and reinterpreting along the way. Same for art. No one's gonna put my art on their walls, but that's not the point. It was about encountering God and experiencing this moment. Enjoying God in our creativity is about connection with God and connection with others, not about comparison. Doesn't matter how it measures up to anyone else. Right? If you put 3-year-olds with some blocks, it's not a competition. They're just soaking it up, laughing and enjoying. Right? We need to get back to that kind of childlike faith and encounter of God. And enjoying God and creativity is way more about process. The process of making al pastor tacos than it is about the product. And so this is what we're gonna do this week. So simple. I've said it for like 30 minutes. You got the message yet? Get creative. Get creative. God will meet you there. Now, some of you don't have ideas yet, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you a very quick list as we wrap up, and you are welcome to write this down for you or throw an elbow at the person next to you, okay? If you don't have any ideas yet, you're like, I'm just not creative. I don't know what to do. Pick the thing from this list that scares you the most and just give it a try. It will be both an adventure and creativity, all right? Just soak it up along the way. Make some space. So here it is. Maybe your creativity this week is food delivered, like my friend Stacy. She delivered some Mississippi mud pie one time. I'm like, oh my goodness, this will kill me and it's worth it, right? Make something and then deliver it. Connection with people, connection with the people you're making. Or my buddy Joey, who's been in COVID, got into woodworking and builds all kinds of stuff that people are really enjoying and finding their way into. Maybe it's like my friend Carol, who sews pillows. We're both from Illinois, so she got her Cubs shirt, her Bears pillow, and Blackhawks. But on the back of those pillows is Raiders and Knights because we're loyal to local, both locals. All right? Maybe it's films edited, like re-putting things together, putting them up on YouTube. Maybe it gets 1 view. Who cares? Enjoy the process. Or like my buddy Curtis, who goes all out when karaoke is an option, right? What you lack in talent, just make up for in confidence, okay? Maybe it's karaoke performed, or maybe it's any number of other things, right? It could be, I don't know, what's next? The next thing could be what? Laughter. Just find creative ways to bring laughter up and out of other people. Maybe you work on crafting stories that you can tell in different places that people just get drawn into the details and you love it. Maybe it's music that you can create and share. I just talked with a friend, Les, last night, and I'm like, hey, do you play any instruments? He goes, actually, I play the spoons. And I'm like, we need a spoons concert right now. He didn't have them. Next week, we're doing it. Maybe you want to snap some photos. Doesn't matter if they're good. Enjoy the process of putting it together. Maybe you want to arrange stuff and order stuff, like get some really great things organized. Like when you walk into the Container Store, you're like, I found my people, you know? Do that. I don't know, maybe that's you. Or it's puzzles solved. You love to solve things and find problems and work your way through. Jesus was an epic problem solver and debater along the way, so creative in the way that he did that. Maybe it's gardens tended like we were from the beginning. Maybe it was space arranged to create this atmosphere that people just absolutely connect and enjoy and relax. Or like my friend Dan, who loves to write poetry. Maybe it's Poetry Pinned or Antiques Restored, or maybe it's DIY Discovered like Aaron and Ellie. I don't know what it is. Do you have something? Nod your head if you got something. So who's got something to make this week? Tell the person right now what you're gonna make this week. Go. There's so much good stuff in life. A friend of mine, his wife and daughter are like, hey, we need to go to Michael's right now because we're gonna make some stuff. And so I just wanna publicly apologize to my friend for having to go to Michael's. Because you need to make some stuff. What we're not looking for is just a hobby to fill time. What we're looking for is the God who made us. We're not looking for good without God. We want to engage him and encounter him in the process. This is about connecting with the God who loves us most, of being in awe of him and putting into practice the things that he's kind of put in us to express and share and connect with other people. We're not looking for good without God. We don't need to waste moments. We can savor and engage them, and God will meet us in them. We're also not looking for God without good. It's not even what he invites us to. From the very beginning, he looks across all he had made, including his image bearers who were made to be creative creators, and he said, they are very good. What we're after is enjoying God in the good life. That's what we're after. So find some time. Make some time. Put it right in the middle of your Sabbath. Collect the stuff. Laugh like crazy when it's a total fail, but enjoy God in the process. One of the things that occurred to me on my last hike is I think I figured out why I like hiking so much in Yosemite. Because no matter where I am, it looks like a postcard. And so wherever I'm about to be next, I actually expect good things constantly. I expect the next epic view. I expect the next wildlife. I expect the next intricate detail or massive vista. I expect good all along the way. And here's what I think God's inviting us to in this series, is to expect good. Look forward to this time you've set aside. As you do it, look forward to the outcome. Look forward to sharing it with someone around you and telling the story all along the way, but above all, enjoy God in the process because he's so good.
All of us have been created in God's image, which means that since he's a creator, we are creatives. Doesn't matter how we compare to anyone else, creativity is a way that we can enjoy God. So get creative this week. Spend some time alongside some others enjoying God being creative. If there's any way we can support you or connect with you along the way, we'd love for you to shoot us a text. You can send the words good stuff to 94000 and we'll help you go even farther with some reminders, some challenges, and some encouragements along the way. We hope to see you soon.